Welcome to the Creator's Journey with the Halfling and the Spaceman. We love talking to creators about their journeys, and today we are talking with Nick Nethery. Nick has written several short stories in various anthologies with different genres. His debut novel, Relics of the Fallen, has just been released in August of 2025. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to see both of you.
Well, thank you for being here. It's great to talk to you. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing very well. Thank you. How are y'all?
We're doing fine. Congratulations on your first novel. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
uh, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you would just tell us and our viewers and listeners out there a little bit about yourself and how was it that you chose to start writing as a creative outlet?
Sure. Well, I live in Texas with my family, wife and kids. We just recently moved here after I retired from the military. Um, I I always wanted to be a writer or creator. I was thinking about being a musician at one point, um, but then. Uh, 9/11 happened, and I ended up staying in the army way longer than I thought I would, and I ended up really enjoying what I was doing. So I kind of detoured a little bit, but once I was coming up to the end of my time in the army, I had already written a few professional articles for journals, and I was kind of getting back into toying with fiction, and I knew I wanted to do something in retirement that interested me, that was challenging, but that also wouldn't take me away from my family as much as I had been. So that's it seemed like a logical thing to try.
Very good. Well, thank you for your service. Um,
Thank you.
So, Nick, we always talk to people about their creation from the point of view of their fandom and their fan loves. So, for you, what was your earliest fan love?
The earliest thing I can remember being really into was Lord of the Rings in middle school. My parents had a beautiful old box set with the gold trim around the edges of the pages of all four of the books, and I would take those with me on trips, and I read those pretty incessantly. And I also got into Ender's Game around that time, Orson Scott Card,
mhm.
and loved it. But I didn't realize I liked the entire thing, science fiction and fantasy. I thought maybe those were just, a couple of things that I liked until. So uh, my father was deployed to the Bosnia conflict in the 90s, if you remember that,
Yeah.
and partway through that, he got a couple of weeks of leave, and my family, my mom and me and my sister, we flew over and met him in Germany. And so we stayed on a base there, and he had some leave, and so we kind of tooled around Germany. And on the base was a little library, and I stumbled over the early novelizations of the Shadowrun,
Mm-hmm.
role playing game, and also a couple of the early BattleTech books that were very similar. They were novelizations of RPGs, and I realized I think I like this whole thing, this whole. So, and I had already also been reading some of the early Tom Clancy novels and Stephen Hunter, so I knew I also leaned a little bit more towards military. But from there, I devoured anything with like a spaceship or magic that I could kind of get my hands on. And then as I got a little bit older, I discovered video games like the early Fallout games and Final Fantasy. And then as I got a little bit older and into high school and college, I discovered in the early aughts we had things like the Elder Scrolls and Halo games. So that was kind of my progression from early kidhood as I devoured what I could into kind of young adult fandom.
Did you have an interest in, say, cartoons, anime, or things of that nature?
I wasn't super into anime. The cartoons that I liked were funny ones, Simpsons and Rocko's Modern Life, and some of those early quirky
Yeah.
ones. And so I think I got a sense of humor from those, not necessarily a science fiction or fantasy appreciation from
Wow.
cartoons.
At an early age, it sounds like you sort of had, your family sort of understood your love of these things, and they were okay with it. They supported it. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, my mom was an English teacher, and I think her philosophy was, uh, and I think she would agree with this. Whatever your kid is reading, even if it's not your thing, or even if you think it's dumb, it might be not your taste, or you think it's low. Whatever your kid is reading, as long as or she is reading, d- encourage it. Um, if they're into reading enough, because of, I mean, name any genre.
Yeah.
Some kids get into books about horses or books about sports or
Right.
whatever. Um, you get them into that enough, at least in my case, and they'll discover all of literature through that. So I think that's what my parents' approach
Hmm.
was. As long as I was reading something,
Yeah.
it was good, and I mean, that kind of worked for
Yeah.
me. I mean, I went from science fiction and fantasy and military thriller like Clancy to, older texts of different genres like westerns, and detective stuff. So I think that's a good philosophy to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very supportive of me, um, growing up. Just whatever I would consume, they thought it was good.
And do you have the support of your family now that you're writing?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, my wife is a nerd like me, and I mean, I one of our wedding presents actually was the original Xbox console, and so when we got back from our honeymoon, I wasn't on active duty orders yet, and we played through the first Halo together and a couple of the early Xbox games together, and then when the kids came along, um, I mean, they like lots of stuff, but they also are into science fiction and
Yeah.
fantasy. And my older boys now that are old enough to read what I write, they think it's cool that Dad's telling stories, that they like to read. And I mean, that's really why at the end of the day, that's why I wanted to start writing in earnest again. Is I wanted to tell stories that they would
Yeah.
love, that would entertain them. So yeah, they've been really supportive.
Good. Good.
Hey, and halfling, it's like I say, the family that plays together stays together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly. No, and the older boys, for sure. I've got a Gloomhaven set up behind me here, and we play Giant Killer Robots and Space Station Zero all the time. So it's, yeah, for sure.
That's
That's
cool.
that's a that's a good axiom.
Nick, we've talked a little bit about your fandom and how you got into sci-fi books, and it tied into your writing. Do you find yourself drawing from the material you've read in the past? I know you mentioned Ender's Game, and you know, Ender's Game is one of those really weird books because you got people like me who are really big Speaker for the Dead guys, and I really didn't get Ender's Game. And there's some people that just go gaga over Ender's Game. So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
I mean, I was a kid, so I enjoyed the idea of a kid. I mean, I enjoyed the idea of a kid that was my age being, the old trope, like you are the chosen one. It turns out that you have the special skill. Maybe you didn't have it bestowed upon you and never had to practice at it, but you you were the one that could save the day. Maybe not all of mankind, but you could do something great and help people. That I think that's what appealed to me. I read them, but I never got into the Speaker for the Dead continuation. What I really got into was a few years later when Card wrote the Ender's Shadow, that kind of avenue with that followed Bean, and that what was happening back on Earth after Ender left. Man, I loved those. Those are some of my favorite books still. Um, but I liked the idea of as a kid like me at the time, doing great things, and yeah, so that's what I liked about Ender's Game.
I think we all just need to remember the one piece of wisdom from Ender Wiggin as that the enemy gate is down.
For sure. Yep.
Halfling, over to you.
Well, I really have sort of a two-part question. The first is if you can give us the sort of the elevator pitch for your first novel, um, Relics of the Fallen. Did I get that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Relics of the Fallen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I thought for a second, maybe I got that backwards. But
I
anyway,
love I love the title.
Thank
I
you.
had it right. I'm sorry. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, obviously, so I apologize. But
That's fine.
Oh, don't worry, she will.
true. He speaks the truth. But give us sort of the elevator pitch, just very briefly, and then tell us what you might be working on now.
Sure. Okay. Relics of the Fallen is the story of a guy retiring from the army, and he gets recruited into a special unit that deals with artifacts and items of just immense power. They've been left all over Earth, and their function and purpose we don't really understand. We don't know who built them or why. And this special unit was formed sometime in the past to find, analyze, and kind of safeguard these artifacts uh, from exploitation by possible adversary powers, politically here on Earth, and just to further develop our understanding of them. Um, I've always kind of liked the subgenre of alien archaeology. Jack McDevitt did a bunch of books in that vein, or old games like Escape Velocity. Halo has some of it as well. The alien archaeology
Mm-hmm.
theme, and then even shows with not necessarily alien, but m- not fully understood artifacts like Warehouse 13 or that old show.
Yeah.
What was it? The Lost Room. That always fascinated me. So I wanted to play with that idea
Mm-hmm.
and then also bring my military experience into it a little bit. I really liked being part of small units of very highly trained individuals. I liked being in all the units I was in, but those are my favorite ones. The small units with special missions, kind of that operated autonomously. Um, just published by Raconteur Press this last month. I interned with Raconteur at the end of my Army career, and I'm still with them, still doing editing and layout and some other things. As far as what I'm currently working on, it's I I plan after this to do a sequel to Relics of the Fallen, but right now I'm working on a fantasy. I'm tentatively calling it The Peace Child. You're familiar with the old kind of ancient and sacred tradition of the peace hostage, right? When two kingdoms go to war and one loses, the loser has to send one of their princes, one of their or
Mm-hmm.
princesses to live with the winning kingdom, and they depending on the culture, they can treat them very well or very poorly. But the implicit
Right.
promise is, if you start anything again, your child will not
Right.
come out. So this is a little boy from a losing kingdom who's been living with the winning kingdom for a few years, and the king discovers a plot among his own nobles to to murder this little boy so they can start up the war again. And
Oh.
he asks this trusted general, one of his old friends, to take this little boy to and the novice nun, who's this little kid's babysitter, to a safe place until he can figure out and deal with this plot. It's set. Uh, it's fantasy, so, and there's sort of magic, and so it's not exactly entirely accurate historically, but it's roughly in the 30 Years' War uh, level of technology, 1630s ish, with little magic thrown in. And I'm coming up on the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm maybe 80% of the way done with that. I'm excited.
That sounds exciting. I mean, it really does.
It does.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really cool, and I would be very happy to see that come to fruition and get it in my hands.
You, I really like the concept of the first book because for the first couple of seasons of The Halfling and the Spaceman, the ongoing joke was that I was training for my new career as an ancient astronaut theorist. I figure if if that Nick guy with the big hair can get a show on the History Channel, I can too, right?
There you
You
Sure.
know,
go.
I mean, I was around in the '80s when the flock of seagulls were around. I could do the hammer like that. So
I believe in you. We just need to get you in front of the right executive and pitch it.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. All it takes is the right
Yep.
executive.
Uh,
Well, Nick, we talk to people about their process quite a bit. Every creator does things just a little differently. So tell us about your writing process. How do you go from conception to a completed work?
Okay. Well, it's usually starts with spitballing or ideating, I guess is the right term for it, with my wife and maybe a close friend of mine or two. My writing partner, Spearman Burke, occasional writing partner, Spearman Burke. I can usually bounce ideas off of him or an old college roommate who is equally as nerdy as me, and between them and just bouncing things off my wife, I can usually come up with a good concept, and then I move to a pretty detailed outline. And as I'm getting more experienced, it's getting bigger. The outline gets more detailed, so it can be a few dozen pages long at this point. Um, and that sounds maybe like overkill, and even to me a couple of years ago it would have sounded like overkill, but I find as the more detailed it is, the less I have to think about what I mean. It's more paint by numbers. I don't have to try to motivate myself as much if I just don't feel like it. If I don't feel productive on a certain day, I can still sit down and do the work, unless I just really uh, don't feel it. But I mean that helps me avoid any hangups or delays. And it's working well so far, until I find a better method. I mean, as 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 far as shorts, I mean, it's basically the same process, just boiled down and in a tighter time frame. The outline might only be a couple of pages, and then it's just a tighter writing schedule. Um, Once I'm done, or once think I'm most of the way done, I'll share it with again my wife and maybe a buddy or two, and I'm part of an alpha reader group, the Alpha Mercs, that I found through Writer Dojo, actually. And then once I get good notes from two or three of those people, I'll sit down and I'll rewrite the entire thing from scratch. I don't go back in and edit my first draft. I'll print my first draft with all of the notes combined, and then I'll blank page draft the entire thing again. And after that, if I poke too much more at it, I feel like it's too much. So at that point, I think it's ready to submit. So that's pretty much the process I'm at now.
did you do anything special to really start developing your writing skills? Did you take any writing courses or you know did, what type of things did you do to sort of prepare yourself for writing?
First and foremost, reading, and a good love of a healthy love of good storytelling. And again, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to read. I call them texts, but they're the famous kind of progenitors in different genres, even if I wasn't a big. So for westerns, I went back and read some of the most famous L'Amour or Larry McMurtry. For detective, maybe The Big Sleep, or even more recent stuff like The Friends of Eddie Coyle. And uh, so I think you just have to have a love of all different genres and consume different genres, because you really you see different stories that you might not see if you only restrict yourself to one. And then practice in those different genres. Methods or genres you don't normally write in, even if they don't end up getting submitted and sold, it I feel like it develops muscles that you don't normally work out. Uh, Not to over analogize, but fitness guys talk about muscle shock, about not doing the same workout every time. And I feel like
Yeah.
maybe that's not a direct comparison, but I like that analogy because I feel like developing mental muscles and surprising them, that's just as important as if you're a gym rat and want to and want to keep changing up your workout. Um, I hate when I'm doing them, but I see the big benefit in doing writing exercises like the ones you find in 3 a.m. Epiphany or some of those. I'm not a big believer in how to write guides, but I like those short little exercise uh, books that you can do because they, again, some arbitrary rule like write a first person story, 600 to 1,000 words, but don't use the word I. It's a first person story, but don't use the word. That sounds dumb, but it forces you to those dumb little lanes that you have to put yourself in force you to innovate in and be creative in a different way that you normally wouldn't. I think it's made me better, and I still try to do those once in a while. And lastly, again, I mentioned working for Raconteur Press, edit an anthology. Um, I sometimes feel like it's a slog, but reading through 100 short stories in a very short amount of time, all with similar themes or rules, you see a ton of things you can emulate, and a ton of tricks and techniques that good writers can use, and a lot of what not to do. Um, so I
Mhm.
think all of that has combined to make me uh, much better than I was, a couple of years ago, and I hope I'm still getting better.
Well, Halfling, has Nick's comment made you have a desire to go back to editing?
No. No, no, but I will say I will say that I can appreciate the commentary about reading different genres, because as part of the channel that I'm actually going to be starting, the Halflings Book Nook, I am I am forcing myself to read different genres, because I got I there's one particular genre that I really love, and it's always my go-to. And I found myself, and there's like 4 or 5 different authors of that genre, and I just kind of circulate through those,
Right.
and getting ready to do this book review channel that I'm going to be doing. I have made the decision that no, I cannot just do a channel about just just those type of books. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to use my brain, and I'm gonna have to consume different content.
I'm still trying to stronger
Yeah.
armor into reading the Silmarillion. I'm just not getting any traction on that so far.
Nah, nah,
It's
afraid
intimidating.
not.
Yeah. Yes, it's like reading the Old Testament if
Exactly.
it was written
Yes.
in Elvish.
But I did read for the first time. I read a Western, and I have to say I absolutely loved it, and I was shocked at myself for the reaction that I had
Cool.
to it. You know, so I really have an appreciation for your comment about reading different genres. Maybe for slightly different reasons, but I feel it. You know, and I can feel the brain kicking in a little bit when I read a different genre.
Sure.
So anyway, to you.
To me. Well, then I'll bring the camera in and I will talk. Well, Nick, it's about time for us to wind down. And the most important thing of our interviews is, where can our listeners and viewers on YouTube find your book?
Okay, well, it's on Amazon, Relics of the Fallen. You can also find a link to it on my website. It's nicknethery.com. I've also got a Substack where, among other whatever ridiculous thing I'm thinking about that week and have written about, there's also links to it on there. So that's where I've also got a Facebook page if you want to go that far. But I mean, that's so any of those things, it's very easy to find from there.
All right,
Awesome.
we'll make sure we get all those in the show notes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Nick, we want to thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it and have had a really good time talking with you about your
And
journey.
putting up with our shenanigans.
And putting up with the shenanigans. Always we appreciate people putting up with us.
That's okay. Thank y'all. Not at all. It's been a blast. Thank you.
but seriously, we really again do appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
And we also want to thank our audience for joining us today, and we hope that you've been entertained and inspired by today's guest, Nick Nethery. And this is the Spaceman for the Halfling and the Spaceman podcast. Over and out.